I went out to Colorado with an ex-boyfriend. He was moving out there. And I said, you know what? I've never been out west. I'm going to go with you. We found this cheap little motel. So we check in and it's about like 8:30, I would say. And I pass out. Some time goes by and all of a sudden out of nowhere, I just see this old miner and he just starts coming for me, almost like he's going for my throat. And I remember sitting up and screaming. And in doing that, I woke up my ex and I turned to look at him and he's sitting there wide-eyed, white. And he says to me, before I open my mouth, he looks at me and he says, "Did you see him too?"
From the dawn of the spoken word, storytelling has been the backbone of human culture, warning of looming dangers and evoking our most personal fears. What you're about to hear are the real-life experiences of everyday people, brave enough to share their terrifying tales. Tales where the horror hits close to home. I'm your host, Danny. Welcome to the Hometown Horrors Podcast. Listen, if you dare. Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to the Hometown Horrors Podcast. It's me, your boy. You know what it is. Today we have on Katrin. The way we specifically know each other is that I got a little side hustle job at a local brewery, and your husband happens to work there.
Yeah.
So when I was trying to get like my foot in the door, it's like, oh, well, you know Olivia and your husband works there, so they'll just put in a good word for me, and it happened to work out.
Yeah, no, he loves having you there, and he said that it's just a really great vibe there, so.
It is a great place.
Lots of sours.
Lots of sours. Sourfest was recently, yeah. But anyway, I hear you have a number of scary stories.
I do. So growing up, I didn't really like horror movies. It wasn't something that I was drawn to. I would watch them if my friends, wanted to watch a certain movie. I would go along with it, but it wasn't something that I necessarily felt like.
Not a genre you ever sought out.
No. And then I started to get older and I started to hear more stories from friends and other people. And I was like, okay, well, I can't necessarily say that they're bullshitting or not. Like they think this happened to them,
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's entertaining. I'll take it at face value. So all of that kind of changed for me, though, when I got to college. I had a roommate, still really good friends with her, Catholic, very religious. She was convinced that she was a clairvoyant. She would just tell me, I have these feelings and I can tell if a place is haunted. If I walk in somewhere, I just get this overwhelming sense of sadness or grief or despair, and I have to leave. And she'll research these places after the fact and come to find that there was a fire, in the 1800s or some terrible tragedy has happened there. So I started kind of listening to her stories. I'm like, this is a person who isn't just making this up. Like she truly believes that these things happen to her. So maybe I should just be a little more open-minded in my own life. Well, a couple years later, I went out to Colorado with an ex-boyfriend. He was moving out there. And I said, you know what? I've never been out west. I haven't really explored that part of the country. I'm going to go with you. And we decided to visit Estes Park, Colorado. And he's telling me, oh, this town, even though it's very touristy and there's Rocky Mountain National Park, a lot of hikers, it's known for the Stanley Hotel. Well, not being a horror movie buff, I was like, what's that? And he said, The Shining. Have you ever seen The Shining? I'm like, no. So we do the day tour. We walk around. I'm like, okay, that's cool and whatnot.
Yeah. It's called the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. Okay. It's a very, very famous setting.
And it's beautiful. And if you go there, that's like one of their big features in this town. So I'm like, cool, nice pit stop. Let's go hike. Let's go do other things. So we go and we do this hike. I'm not a very athletic person by any means. So 8-mile hike for me is enough to knock me out.
That's a bit of a day.
It's a day. And it's enough to knock me out. So, poor college kids, we could not afford to stay at the Stanley.
Yeah, exactly.
We could visit, but we found this cheap little motel, like wooden motel across the street. Middle of nowhere. They have someone manning the desk until about 10 p.m. And then you're pretty much on your own until about 8 the next morning. So we check in. If memory serves me correctly, we did have a fire. The room was toasty, when we went to bed. So I'm exhausted because, again, not athletic. And it's about like 8:30, I would say. And I pass out, like in that state of sleep where nothing could wake you up. You are just dead to the world. You're not even dreaming. Some time goes by and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just see this old miner, old kind of ratty clothes, longish gray beard, kind of scraggly hair. And he just starts coming for me, almost like he's going for my throat. And I'm not a person who screams in the middle of the night. I don't talk in my sleep. I have dreams, but not vivid dreams like this. And I just feel this intense fear, this intense sense of dread and horror. And I remember sitting up and screaming, but I'm not even fully awake. I'm conscious enough to know that I'm reacting, but I'm not conscious enough to know why I'm screaming. And it takes me a moment to kind of realize that I've now woken myself up. And in doing that, I woke up my ex and I turned to look at him and he's sitting there wide-eyed, white, and he just looks terrified. And he says to me, before I open my mouth, he looks at me and he says, "Did you see him too?"
That is the most crazy thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. And I cannot explain the terror and the fear I felt in that moment. It's irrational. You know, this is 12 years ago. So I'm sitting here now and I'm like, okay, you wake up from a bad dream. You have kind of a moment of, was that real? I'm okay. You know, you kind of settle after a minute or so. There was no settling for me. It was the worst terror I felt in my life. And I'm telling myself, it's not real. It's not real. But then there's this other part of me that's like, that was fucking real.
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm thinking like you guys confirmed details after, right? Like,
yes.
Did you go over like what the dude was wearing, what he looked like?
Yes. Because at first I was like, is he messing with me? Did he hear me scream and like he's trying to mess with me and freak me out even more? But he wasn't. I mean, he could tell me to a T what he saw. And it was the exact same description. And in my mind, I was like, it must have been real. It was a spirit of some sort and not a friendly one. And the other thing to add, I mentioned that fire earlier, or that warmth. It was freezing in that room. It was so cold. It was just chilling.
I find it so funny that you were in Estes, and the Estes method is a widely known and widely used method in the paranormal world. And after a little quick research, Connor and Carl, I think that was their names, were the creators of this method, and they created it at the Stanley Hotel.
Oh my gosh.
And so the way that the method works is that if you are the person doing the method, you would be in a room by yourself with headphones on, with your eyes closed, nowhere near anyone who could hear you. And then somebody else would be asking questions. And as the person who's doing the method, you would be sitting in that other room, hopefully receiving answers to that other question. What I think is so funny or so coincidental about your story is how it like draws on the same parallels between the actual method and how your dream was yours until he like verified it for you. And that's exactly what the Estes method does, is you ask a question and then the other person verifies it for you. So I just think it's very crazy that that's how your experience was.
For sure.
Do you remember how long you'd been asleep, or did it seem like the moment you went to sleep, it kind of happened?
No, I definitely knew I was asleep. I would say about 2 hours had passed. And we did check the clock because the intense fear was making me irrational in the sense of, we need to get out of here. And I remember saying that to him over and over. We need to get out. And he lived an hour and a half away. And again, old motel, no one's manning the desk. So we had two options. We could either suck it up and stay, or we could drive the hour and a half just to turn around in the morning and drive the hour and a half back so that we could return the key. And he kept saying, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Like, I think it's gone. We'll be okay. And we did end up staying, but I did not sleep at all the rest of that night. I couldn't.
Well, who could?
Yeah.
That is something too, though. Like a lot of people that have experiences like this, like it is scary. And I think a lot of the fear comes from the fact that like you're reevaluating your whole worldview if something like this happens and has like some validity to it. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of these experiences aren't harmful.
Right.
I don't feel like there's actually like, you know, if you'd stayed there and went back to sleep, like he's going to stab you or something. Like it's more a shock to your mind and your spirit. I'm assuming he had the same dream, and you guys, like, was he watching as you were asleep, or did he have like the same kind of dream?
It must have been a dream for him too, because we were both asleep.
Yeah. So in his dream, was the man coming to strangle him?
At
or
me.
You just saw him coming to strangle you. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is literally a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't like he saw the same thing of a figure coming at him. It was coming at me.
Yeah.
And he saw it going after
So
me.
he probably thought it was just a dream he was having, but since you woke up in the way you did.
Right. And I don't know if it's like that lapse in lucidity when you first wake up, like is this real? Is this not? Am I processing this right? We both probably had a little bit of that going on too, but the fact that he just asked me point blank, did you see him too? For me, that's what validated the whole experience.
That's such a chilling moment. It's amazing.
And 12 years later, I see it clear as day.
Yeah.
I can still see the room. I can still see the image clear as day.
Yeah, that maybe a miner died of tuberculosis in that town at some point.
Well, mining towns, I feel like, are known for kind of, I hate to say it, but like horrible deaths or horrible accidents that happen.
Mining is probably one of the hardest jobs ever.
For sure. And a lot of people are terrified of it for that reason. A lot of people get trapped. And I think that's why West Virginia, the hills of Kentucky, and they kind of have this like haunted feel. And I wonder if that culture contributes to it.
And I know I've talked about it before on episodes. Stone is a big conduit of energy. And so a lot of the time when people have experiences like that, they're in like fields of granite or other things. The energy gets trapped in that rock. Like you're talking about like walking into a room and feeling a vibe. It's the same thing when you walk into somewhere that holds physical energy in the walls. It's like, of course, there's going to be something here because it's made to do that.
That's a good point.
That, of course, was Olivia, our resident crystal girl. Thank you, Olivia. No, that is a good point, too. And I think something else that our little expedition to Trans-Allegheny showed us is if an area is left exactly the way it was when there was something traumatic there or when people lived their lives there, thinking like those mines are probably still there but abandoned. Mm-hmm. That energy would probably just be reeking in that area for all these years.
For sure. And, that makes me think of Savannah, Georgia, one of my all-time favorite places in the world. I was there recently with my best friend and my sister for spring break, and it was their first time there. It was my sixth. But it was interesting because we did do a ghost tour and we did talk about some of the history there. But, talking about stone, one of the big features of Savannah, a very sad feature, unfortunately, is the Savannah gray brick that lines pretty much like the entire historic district.
Oh.
And these are bricks made by slaves, in the 1700s, 1800s. And a lot of the historic homes since have been renovated, but a lot of them have stone and brick foundations. And a lot of the squares in Savannah that are now these beautiful gardens and whatnot are old cemeteries. And, you have stone everywhere you look. Savannah was known for shipping in stone. That's, I think, why I find Savannah so interesting and why it's known as being one of the most paranormal cities is you have that stone and you also have a horrible history, a horrible past. And that comes to play every day. You have a lot of these historic sites that have been revamped, but you also have a lot of historic sites that have been left untouched. So that kind of ties in with your point of what's still lingering there. So speaking of Savannah, now that I'm kind of pondering on it, I do have another story, but this is a much friendlier one. So I've been there, like I've said, multiple times, honeymoon there, vacation there whenever I can. And it was probably the second time me and my husband went, and we always stay at the 1790 Inn. Shout out to the 1790. They're haunted, by the way.
Me and all my homies love the 1790 Inn.
They had this room that we stayed in, and the hotel, like I said, is known for being haunted. And if you talk to the people there, some of them kind of play into it and some of them don't. Like the guy who checks you in, the owner, he's usually like, they're just stories. If you talk to the bartender, he's like, oh yeah, we definitely have, paranormal vibes even here. Our hotel is, again, stone. The entire basement is stone. The stone bar, they have, friendly ghosts that kind of play tricks on the patrons and move silverware and leave coins everywhere. But anyways, I'm getting off track. So we were staying in one of these rooms. We had just driven down 10 hours. So I went to take a shower. Mike went to take a shower, and we're getting ready to go out to dinner or walk out. And this room had a jacuzzi that was not attached to the shower. Very strange. But it was one of those old rooms where the jacuzzi's in the middle of the room. We start to walk out, and all of a sudden the jets just start turning on and off in this jacuzzi. And we both kind of turn back and look, and we're like, did you touch the jacuzzi? And he's like, no. Did you? And we spent some time thinking, is it connected to the shower? No, the shower's not in there. So we just kind of assumed it was a friendly spirit. And we heard them on and off. So we came up with a name. We called it Jerry. So whenever anything funny happens in our house or something moves, we're just like, hey, Jerry, what's up? So, but, definitely not a terrifying, the room didn't get cold, not a terrifying experience like Estes Park.
And you never know. In a situation like that, it may have also just been old wiring or power spikes. I don't know.
Very true. And it was during the day. Evening. It wasn't like this happened in the middle of the night or anything like that.
Yeah. But I mean, that's also when you think a spooky thing is happening. I feel like a lot of things that may actually be paranormal in nature are swept under the rug just because they do happen during the day.
And that's just the thing. Like, I have never had luck when I have gone into a situation and actively tried to speak to the paranormal or have a paranormal experience. My poor mother-in-law, she would love nothing more than to have a ghost story to tell her.
Right.
And we always talk about this. She got married in Savannah. She introduced me to Savannah. And whenever they stay there, there's one room that's haunted. And they've stayed in this room. And she's always like, no, I haven't experienced anything. And
Every night she's just crossing her fingers like, tonight's the night.
Tonight's the night, right? And
something fall over.
She hasn't experienced that. And I wonder if that's part of it too. It's almost like if you go looking for something, it's hidden from you.
No, I think that's a big part of it. Because if you want it to happen, I don't think you're as afraid.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it's because inherently you're not vulnerable to it if you're expecting it.
For sure. And that's not to say I haven't felt creepy vibes or spooky vibes necessarily, because I have. You know, we did a ghost tour there in Savannah about 10 years ago, and all of the stories were interesting. I'm a huge history buff, so I was kind of going along with it more for the history of the home and just to get an idea of what life was like there. And we ended the tour at this one house. And of course, that's where we spent the most time. It was a house on Abercorn Street. And the backstory of this house is it's Savannah. A lot of the homes are built on these squares, which are now these gardens. And it's known for being the city built upon its dead because those lovely gardens are cemeteries. And Calhoun Square, which has since been renamed, was a popular slave cemetery. And time has gone on. You know, they had Revolutionary War, Civil War, bouts of yellow fever, all of these things. And all these stories, kind of like the scariest ones, always circulate around Calhoun Square. I don't remember what it was renamed, but this one house was just covered in mold. And it was dilapidated. And the story they told us was that it was owned by this rich merchant in the 1800s. And his daughter wanted to play with kids at the school nearby. Well, at that time, it was not seen fitting for a young girl to be playing with boys and people of different socioeconomic backgrounds. So she was punished and she was left in the attic for days in the heat. And unfortunately, this little girl perished. And rumor has it that she and others haunt that building.
I would too. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And the story they told us was that families have not been able to stay in that home for more than 18 months after that little girl died. They would come in, something would happen, either a death or something traumatizing, and they would leave. So in the 70s, this family bought the house, tragedy struck, and they left. I think they went to Boston or something, somewhere up north. Well, the girls still had the house. The two daughters maintained that house, or ownership of that house, and they refused to sell it because their story was, we do not want to do this to anybody else. We cannot in good conscience transfer this tragedy to someone else. So the house was left in disarray. The story they told was that they paid like $10,000 a year in taxes to keep the property as a mold infested pit.
As a dump, a hovel.
As a hovel, essentially. And it had gotten so bad, people had come to try to revamp it. And they haven't, like the crews have run away, like they've fallen through the floors. And the city finally said, when this black mold becomes an exterior problem, like we have to do something. So this past time I was there, I walked by and lo and behold, that house was renovated and it's going for $5.5 million.
Good Lord.
And I said, you could not pay me to live there. That was the only place on the tour where, even though I was actively, thinking about paranormal activity, that was the only place where we stood and we were like, we're done. We're getting creepy
there's something
vibes.
There, yeah.
There's something there, and I don't really want to find out what it is.
So did you know about its history before, you got to the location?
No, I didn't. So it was part of the tour, but I remember it creeping me out to the point where I didn't want to walk by that house again. Even the street itself, even though it's a beautiful street. I remember thinking, we can go the roundabout way.
Now that it's renovated, do you feel the same way?
Still, I went to show my sister the house because my sister is very into ghosts and she hasn't actually experienced anything, but she would love nothing more than to. And I took her by the house and for a moment, I couldn't believe it. I remember standing there and thinking, that's not it. There's no way they renovated it. There's no way. And I double checked myself online and sure enough, they had.
So you said it was still for sale. It hasn't been bought. I'd be very interested to see what the new owners experience.
Likewise. I would love to see what the contractors experienced if they had any sort of, paranormal activity while they were working on the house.
Also, mold. That'll cause health concerns. It makes a structure unsafe.
For sure.
I wonder if that could explain some of the things people experienced.
Yeah. If a lot of the tragedies were deaths, unfortunately, and you're right, could it have been a health related incident versus.
Why am I sucking the fun out of my own show? Well, even black mold, like, it does weird things to the human body. Like, you can hallucinate if you have a lot of it. Like, what is it, in your bloodstream? I'm not entirely sure how mold works. When you breathe it in, I guess it fills your lungs and you can hallucinate on it from your lungs to your blood. Mold. It might be a conduit in some way.
That's an interesting theory because a lot of, we've been talking about stone and like some of these old abandoned places. And you're wondering, well, how much of what people experience is based on their environmental factors too.
Yeah, let me read this. Exposure to mold can cause hallucinations in severe cases. Mold produces mycotoxins, which are neurotoxins that cause neurological symptoms that affect mental capability or capacity and physiological makeup. These symptoms include hallucinations, confusion, dizziness, seizures, and trembling. Some researchers say that toxic mold can also cause severe psychosis. For example, the rye ergot fungus can cause psychosis in people who breathe in its fumes. And that was the most learning you'll ever do on this program.
I am a teacher. What can I say?
Yeah, mold could definitely have played a part in what people experienced as a haunting, but at the same time, if the mold did cause people to die, that might also cause legitimate haunting. It's not like all haunting across the world is just mold.
Yeah, for sure. Or it just opens you up to it. Like it puts you in the mindset or lack of a mindset to be open to some of that.
Yeah, because I think that is when people have their most potent supernatural experiences, is when it's out of the blue. Nobody prepares to stub their toe. It just happens.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm so, for lack of a better word, haunted by my story too, is I feel like when you're asleep or preparing to go to sleep, like you're so vulnerable. And that's when a lot of these stories happen. Have you heard about sleep paralysis?
Oh, of course.
I thank God I've never experienced that. And I hope never to. But I've heard stories about people who have, and they always see kind of a similar witch type person. And they're always sitting on them and they feel like they can't breathe at night. Like to me, that's worse than seeing another type of paranormal.
I think that's what the legend of the incubus comes from, is like the little goblin that sits on you and kind of constricts your breath. We've had so many sleep paralysis episodes. Some of them are like there's a man in like a black coat and a black hat that stands over you and looks at you. I've had a number of sleep paralysis dreams myself.
Oh, gosh.
And they come in all flavors.
Have you seen The Witch?
No, it's usually just like a dark figure that maybe I'm not looking at, but I can feel them standing over me. And I'm trying to move like the tiniest part of my body to like strike at them before they realize I'm conscious.
So do you think that's a paranormal figure, or do you think that's more of an internal, like, mental dream?
So I've read a couple different things about sleep paralysis. What the actual phenomena of not being able to move when you're asleep is. Your body releases like a chemical to keep you from spasming in your sleep like a dog. And what happens is that you're waking up, but your body's producing that chemical. So you may be trying to move and it's just not happening.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also something in your mind that helps you detect presence. How like when you're driving past someone in a car.
And they're staring at you.
Yeah, right? Like you can feel the eyes of somebody on you. It's kind of just like your body naturally detecting presence. What they think sleep paralysis is the product of those two things coming together. It's like a misfire. You think you detect somebody and then you can't move to defend yourself.
What I think is so crazy about sleep paralysis, though, is exactly what you're describing, that like when people do have these sleep paralysis dreams, there's obviously a very large range and a wide variety of what they experience, myself included. But there are so many strong connections to the exact same type of image or character or being that shows up. Like, are we all programmed the same way? Is this something that lives in our mind rent-free? Or is this truly some kind of being that we are all seeing in this vulnerable state of sleep paralysis? Because you are not wrong. There are so many people that describe the exact same images that like held them or like tormented them in their sleep paralysis. And it's like, we can't all be making up the same thing from nothing.
Right.
I just want to say, Katrin, your story is like the perfect example of how there can be an actual figure or character related to these phenomena.
Right. That's true. And thankfully, I had enough adrenaline or whatever to sit up. So I'm very fortunate that I didn't feel paralyzed in that moment. I felt like I could react and I could wake myself up and essentially snap out of it. Whereas the stories I've heard about sleep paralysis, people are literally trapped for what feels like hours and it's torturous. And I don't know if this is relevant or not, but in thinking about sleep paralysis and my own sleep over the past couple years, I've been fortunate not to experience something like that. Now, this might sound crazy, but I'm wondering if that has anything to do with the fact that I have a dog and 2 cats, and they tend to sleep with us. And everyone who has cats that sleep with them will say at certain points of the night, they go crazy. Like one of my cats has been doing this thing where certain nights we'll all be asleep and all of a sudden he'll just attack the bed. He just goes into this like fit where he wakes up and he's just attacking. And I almost wonder if they have like another sense to where maybe there is something or they sense something and their waking up and attacking isn't so much, what we all think of as crazy, but it's more of like a protective thing.
Yeah, maybe it's not just zoomies.
Yeah, right.
That's another genre of story I've heard is the dog or the cat that'll stare into certain corners of rooms and they'll just get freaked out by nothing. There's a movie called Constantine based on a comic book, John Constantine. He's like this medium guy who can like go into hell and he fights demons and stuff. There's a good Keanu Reeves movie about it. And in the movie, he has to go into hell to get some kind of item or relic. And he notices that the woman he's trying to help in her apartment, she has a cat. And he's like, oh, good. Cats are half in, half out. And then he just like stares into the cat's eyes and he's able to go into hell. That's just been ingrained in my head anytime I hear like a paranormal story with a cat.
Yeah, I wonder if they really are just acting out of protection versus craziness. But one of the stories they told us on our ghost tour in Savanah, they were talking about a specific location and this family that brought their golden retriever on vacation with them. And they were supposed to stay for like a week. And the dog was so out of sorts, wouldn't eat, wouldn't walk, just sick. I mean, they thought their dog was dying. And they packed up the car and they started to drive home. And they reported that the further out they got from Savanah, the dog regained his appetite. He started moving. And by the time they got home, he was totally fine. That story always stuck with me, too.
Whenever there's like a great natural disaster coming or a big storm, animals respond and react first. They can sense the change in nature.
Yeah. So it's almost like they have that, for lack of a better term, that sixth sense that we don't always have. I would be interested to kind of study that more and hear more stories of people who have experiences with the paranormal and their animals reacting to it.
So we don't currently have any pets, but we watched a cat for what felt like a very long time. He was only supposed to be with us for 3 months and it ended up being like 7 or 8 months. And so we had an orange cat. If you've ever had an orange cat.
I do. Torment. Torment the tormentor.
Yeah. If you've ever had an orange cat, you know the vibes. But the first couple of nights that he got here, he would cry desperately. I'm allergic to cats, just to throw that out there. And specifically him, I would just instantly like get very itchy and hivey. So at night, I would keep him closed out of my room, but he could free roam the house. And he would sit outside of my room and just cry and shove his arm under the door, even up until the last night. I mean, he used to do that like every single night. And maybe some of it was separation anxiety, but I wonder now if that was like something more.
Our cat, Tormund, the orange one from Game of Thrones, Tormund, he also does that. I mean, we have patches outside of our bedroom door in the carpet where he's torn up because he's been so desperate to get in. So like the bad pet parents we are, we just caved and we just let him in now. And that's when I've noticed, sometimes he'll sleep through the night, but then those other nights are when he'll just spaz out. And I'm curious if it's something, if he sees something and that's his reaction.
Well, if I could weigh in, I think Zeus was just a menace. I love that cat, but I just do think he was out of his mind and crazy.
They say orange cats do that.
Yeah. I miss him, but I also don't miss him.
I'm sure you enjoy your sleep.
Oh, you have no idea. The moment something starts messing with my nightly sleep, like it becomes number one on my shit list.
Speaking of sleep, I'm curious how much of a factor that plays into some of these. We've talked about sleep paralysis, and of course, my story occurred when I was asleep. I'm curious if there's a difference in people who tend to sleep well versus people who have insomnia or who get up frequently at night. If there's something more there.
Well, to quote the New Age philosopher Billie Eilish, when we go to sleep, where do we go? If your mind is like a TV when you're asleep, sometimes I think you can tune into signals that may not come from you. I mean, the theories about dreams alone, it's like, are you tapping into other versions of like maybe previous lives? Or if there's like a multiverse, maybe those are other experiences. Maybe it's just your mind logging the things that happened during your day into your subconscious. Or maybe it's just your mind taking things from your experience throughout your life and just recontextualizing it so you can process trauma or just recover, or it could be so many different things.
Yeah.
I think nighttime is just naturally scary too, though. going back in time when we were like living very tribally, like in caves or even small villages, that would be when you get raided. That would be when, if you're fighting a war, that's when you sneak attack.
Mm-hmm.
Things have always lurked in the darkness. There are predators that are only active during night. And I think that's just a very historic fear for every creature.
And you lose a sense, essentially. You're down a sense. But then you hear of people who lose other senses and then their other senses become heightened.
That is true. Does our sixth sense just come alive, or is it our imagination running wild when it doesn't have enough stimulus? That's the whole thing with sensory deprivation. If you take away your ability to see and hear, like if you're living in just like an inputless environment, you'll start hallucinating.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind is like that orange cat outside your door. It doesn't have enough stimulus, so it's just going crazy. Like something happened, anything. I'm so fucking bored.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, we're getting to it this time.
I'm kind of interested in people who think that they are like seers.
Mediums?
Yeah.
Premonitions? A
Psychic?
Yeah.
Psychic ability to an extent always fascinated me. I have never seen a psychic personally, but I have always wanted to. And I know there's one in this area. One of my really good friends, Amy, she has seen one, and she is a psychologist, but she like swears by them. The idea that people can not necessarily predict things to a T, but have a sense of what's coming or can get kind of an aura from somebody and see where things may lead has always fascinated me. But then that's almost kind of terrifying too, because it's like, well, what if your fears manifest? It's like that idea of you will it to be.
Yeah. Speak it into existence. You put energy to it, it becomes more likely. That's a proven thing too. If you want to achieve a goal in life, you have to visualize yourself doing it beforehand. That creates the possibility in your mind and helps you execute it in reality. There is a lot to show that willing something into existence creates the probability that it will happen and increases it. Something that I really love the idea of is that the more complex video games get, it kind of helps people understand more about the world we live in now. The more you create like a little miniature world, the more you can see parallels. Maybe being a clairvoyant is a lot like looking through the source code for a video game where you can see like how something will work or how something will play out. And I do believe that there are people in the world that whatever thread the universe has, if time is really a flat circle, everything that will ever happen has already happened. And it's something for some people that is observable. If time does not work for every being on Earth the same way.
It's like that idea of deja vu almost.
Yeah. That maybe you can see the inner workings of what will happen later. And I think as children, we're more attached to that.
Yeah.
Having just come from what? Do we come into existence from another place before we're born? Or is it just that we don't know the rules of the world yet, so we're more open to more ephemeral things? When you're a child, almost everything is abstract. You have to learn structure. You have to learn language, what numbers are. These are all things that we created to give life context. These things, like without their context, mean nothing.
Crystal Girl here, our resident Crystal Girly.
She's back!
We went to Penhurst Asylum a couple weekends ago, and we met with a medium while we were there. A medium's a little different than a psychic because they can like speak or converse with people who have passed on, versus like a psychic can actually like tell you more about your future. And so when I was talking to the medium, I was sitting there and I was asking so many questions. And I remember seeing her earlier in the day, and she had headphones on, just like blocking out the world. And so I had asked her about that. And she said that jokingly, but in all seriousness, it feels like she is drunk after a certain point in the day because she has been so exhausted. She's like delirious. Like she doesn't know what voice in her brain is hers. And so when she tried to explain her gift, I just recalled seeing her with her headphones on, and that was a perfect explanation of why. She is so overstimulated with all of these thoughts. Some of them come from herself, but she's not in charge of the ship. Like the thought just comes to her brain and then she's supposed to act on it. So she'll sit there and ask a question like, do you have a loved one that's passed? And she'll say that out loud. And then in her brain, she gets the answer before she actually hears your answer. And so I was like just asking her, is this something that someone taught you how to do? Or is this something that you just like stumbled upon? And she said that she was overwhelmed when she was younger with like these feelings or like this empathetic vibe, and that it was something that she couldn't explain. And so then she did more research into it until she finally understood exactly what was happening to her. And so I think that there are lots of people like that who have that same kind of, I know something's happening right now, but either A, I don't want to sound crazy, or I don't know how to explain exactly why or where I'm getting this information from.
And part of it, I think at that point is like a want for it. Like my aunt has talked about seeing her mother in dreams, or my mother passed away when I was young, I was 16. And my aunt has told me that she's had dreams and she's seen my mother, you know? So I almost wonder if it's like because she wants to.
There's the other more horrifying aspect to it too, which is like if there is actually other entities in existence outside of just humans, things that prey off of energy and pain. It's kind of like a loan shark coming to you when you're out of money, when you're in a very vulnerable place to take advantage of you.
Yeah. I really think you guys should go to Savanah and do like your take on it. Because I know I talked about a few different stories. I mean, I have more. I could sit here for hours and talk about them, but you don't even have to do a ghost tour. I've found like even in talking to locals, like at 1790, I love the bartender there. His name is Scott. He's just really fun. And he remembers you, you know, like there have been years where I haven't gone and like a year or two has passed. And like just recently I went there with my sister and my best friend McLean, and he remembered me. He's like, I know you. So just people like he's wonderful. But like I've talked to him a few times when we've gone in, and I've just said like, Scott, you're a Savanah native, or, you know, you've been here a long time. Like, do you buy into this? I know a lot of it is commercialized, and you'll see like the hearses driving around and people doing the ghost tours in there. But he'll say, I do. And I can't say that everything is as straightforward or as spooky as people make it out to be or want it to be.
The most definitive statement I could make is that your mileage will vary with the supernatural.
Yeah.
Some people are just having experiences left and right. Some people will have maybe one or two crazy things happen throughout their life. And whether or not they were actually the result of something, they'll just never know.
Yeah. And I think as you go through life, what you experience plays a role in that.
Well, Katrin, thank you very much for coming on the show. I've been missing an episode like this where we just kind of spitball and have fun.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
As it always is. So, folks, we'll see you next time.
Now those were some frightfully fun stories. Howdy everybody, it's me, your host Danny, and I wanted to let you in on something special. You might have noticed that when I introduce the show, I say we are the Hometown Horrors podcast. That's because there will always be at least 3 people in each episode. Me, the person who wants to hear a good story, the guest, the teller of a good story, and you, the listener, that takes that story and carries it with you out into the world. And we make up a special kind of trinity. We are the Hometown Horrors podcast. And if you ever want to graduate from listener to guest, reach out to us via our handle on Instagram, hometown_horrors_podcast. Our email is thehometownhorrorspodcast, no spaces, @gmail.com, or via text or phone call at 571-358-8880, which FYI is not my personal number, but give it a ring. I'll get back to you, because if there's anything I've learned from doing the podcast is that everybody has a story, and that story deserves to be heard. On your number one source for the most spine-tingling, gut-wrenching, insomnia-inducing stories around, the Hometown Horrors Podcast.